I'm going to make a confession to you right off the bat. We're not really going to study the Bible tonight. If you want to sneak out while I'm not looking, that won't offend me. The Bible will be part of what we're looking at. But really what we're doing is looking at church history. All right? Religious history is both my passion and my trade, and fortunately, I get the opportunity both tonight and next Wednesday night to talk to you a little bit about the origins of the Baptist denomination. And so that's what we're going to do. If I sound excited about it, that's because I am excited about it. Tonight's presentation / discussion is called The Early Baptist Part 1. Princes, Persecution, and Puritans. I broke my cardinal rule of never alliterating, but obviously I've done it here. I thought that sounded like a provocative title. Princes, Persecution, Puritans. And then I let this sit in. Do you want to know who this is? Henry VIII. Yeah, I let him just kind of creepily look at you while you were eating. Just kind of get you in that immersive experience of what we're going to be looking at tonight. Now, I'll tell you one reason I'm excited about, and not just about church history in general, but just about the kind of questions you and I will be asking both this week and next week. Where do we come from as Baptists? Where do we come from? We're tapping into fundamental questions. Where did we come from? Or for you grammarians, whence did we come? I don't know your persuasion. But these are questions that are not unique to Baptists, right? The very first book of the Bible was trying to answer that question in the first chapter. Where did we come from? Mythologies from other religions, all throughout world history, people have been asking this question: where did we come from? If you're a parent and your young child comes up to you, the scariest question ever is, Mommy and Daddy, where did I come from? I'm not listening. These are questions that we want to know. And so that's what you and I are going to look at for the next couple of weeks. Where did we come from as Baptists? The stork brought us. Yeah, that would make it a short lecture. Well, it really depends on who you ask. Right? It depends on who you ask. In church history, various people have given different answers for where Baptists come from. I'm not going to read this. Various people in church history have given answers as to where Baptists came from. In the mid-19th century, J.R. Graves and some of his buddies, called landmarkers, started promulgating this idea that Baptists could trace their succession all the way back to Jesus. Spoiler alert, that's not where we're going to go in the next couple of weeks. But in landmarkism, mid-19th century, this was a big deal. A lot of people bought into this, that you could just trace Baptists all the way back. That your family tree is really just the trunk. It goes from Baptist to Jesus, and all the other churches were false churches. That Baptists were the only true church. Landmark. Now, if you went later in the 19th century, you might have seen a couple of other ideas. One was spread by W.H. Whitsitt, who was the president of Southern Baptist Theological Seminary in the late 19th century. He came up with this crazy idea from looking at church history that Baptists actually began, right, around 1640. The 1640s, when Baptists recovered, again I'll put the quotes there, recovered baptism by immersion. And Whitsitt said that's where Baptists came from. Well, you've got a lot of landmarker influence during this time. And so people didn't really like to hear that. And they said, Whitsitt, we don't like what you're saying. You better retract that. You better put all that historical study just back in the box where you got it from. We don't want to hear that. And Whitsitt went back down. And so what happens? That's a good way to lose your job. And it does. There's a Whitsitt Baptist Historical Society now. A lot of people see Whitsitt as their hero for standing up for church history. But people in the late 19th century didn't really like him that much. That was another theory. But the landmarker impulse really didn't die that easily. It certainly didn't die by the late 19th century. In 1931, a guy by the name of J.M. Carroll, he was the brother of B.H. Carroll, if you've heard of him. He's a famous Baptist pastor in Waco, Texas. J.M. Carroll wrote this book called Trail of Blood. And how he looked at it, and this is great, he traces Baptists all the way back to, get this, Jesus, John the Baptist, and the Jordan River. JJJ. See, he liked alliteration too. And that was a 1930s. People are still pushing this idea that Baptists really don't have a family tree. We just don't. We got our message from Jesus. There have been some ups and downs along the way. The way J.M. Carroll gets around this is really to say, you know all those heretics that we kick out through all these councils over the years? Well, those are actually just Baptists incognito. They weren't calling themselves Baptists, but that's really what they were. Baptists were always just kind of persecuted, still are, marginalized. And that's how he kind of finds a way to bring Baptists to today. Well, things aren't quite that simple. In fact, they're pretty complicated. If I were to show you a family tree of Christianity, and this is about the simplest one I could find, they can get pretty complicated. You can look here, and I'll play meteorologist and just kind of point out just a few things here. And I should tell you, if you're looking at this and saying, boy, babe, what do we got ourselves into? Let me say two things. Number one, only two of the slides are going to be like this. The rest of the presentation will be more narrative focused. But the first two slides are going to be big on the family tree stuff. Second of all, consider yourself lucky that we're just staying here. There are over 30,000 denominations of Christianity. If I put them all up on a family tree, it would make our projector catch on fire. So we're really trying to keep the cookies on the bottom shelf here. Painting with broad strokes. Painting with broad strokes. Let's look back at early Christianity. That's where Jesus is. Right here. We start moving in this direction. By the 5th century, you have, actually by the 4th century, you have a number of ecumenical councils. That means our church worldwide councils, or what we thought were the worldwide church during that time. That is all happening in the 4th century. Into the 5th century, you have these groups that are going to break off as a result of these councils. These are the folks that lost. Right? You take a vote at the council. If you lose, those people, they split off and they form these other churches down here. We don't really have time to talk about them. But these councils are all trying to wrestle with the idea of who is Jesus. Is he 50% man, 50% God, 100% God, 100% man? How does that work? All those councils have something to do with that. And so different people don't like the answers that the church comes up with, and so they split off. Fast forward up here to the 11th century, 1054. We're in the high Middle Ages now. The church experiences its first major split. It's a major split between a group that will be known eventually as the Roman Catholic Church and a group known as the Eastern Orthodox Church. And you see Eastern Orthodoxy comes down here, and this is your blue line here. We're going to follow here. Let's go up here on the red path with the Catholic Church. You'll see by the 15th century, something we're really familiar with, the Reformation is occurring. Or we should say reformations. It's actually a lot of reformations that are happening at the same time in the 15th century, or 16th century rather. You'll see one group split up here. Those are the Anabaptists. If you don't know who the Anabaptists are, that doesn't mean they're anti-Baptist. It also doesn't mean that they are necessarily our spiritual ancestors either. We'll touch on that a little bit more later. But if you want to know the spiritual descendants of the Anabaptists, look at the Mennonites or the Amish. Some other groups like that. Traditional peace denominations, pacifists, associate with Anabaptism. I don't really like that they've made Protestantism its own little thing. Actually, you can put all that in Protestantism. But you and I tonight are going to focus on this blue line. Anglicanism. Otherwise known as the Church of England. In America, you translate that into American. Basically, we're talking about Episcopalianism. So if you have an Episcopalian friend, you can go say, hey, we studied here. If you have Episcopalian friends. If you don't, go make some, folks. Go make you an Episcopalian friend. Go make you some Lutheran friends. I found out they're all over the place here in Hickory. I grew up in Wayne County, North Carolina. I thought Lutherans were like unicorns or people from Wyoming. Like they're there in theory, but you never really met one. You come to Hickory, they're everywhere. Oh, it's great. It's delicious. And so anyway, back on track. Stop trying to get me off track. We're going to go over here with Anglicanism and our next family tree. If you thought that one was bad, check this baby out. Now we're just starting with the Reformation. It's like a firework. We just have denominations going everywhere. Here's the Reformation. We're just going to study really down here. Now look, there's Baptists up there. I knew you've been looking. There they are. That's where we are. Where do we come from? Well, you'll have different theories about this. I will tell you, and you probably have already figured this out, but I'm not the be-all, end-all authority on church history. You will have some historians out there who will put a lot of emphasis on Anabaptism. We can touch on that next week if you're interested in that. They'll say that Baptists are really outgrowths of Anabaptism. I know a lot. Most historians I know are not big fans of that theory. Some are. Most are not. Most are going to say that Baptists come out of Anglicanism, and this little offshoot here, the Puritans. All right? So now you see, whoever drew this family tree, I'm not the one who did it, but they put Baptists here trying to bridge between Anabaptism and Puritanism there. They're trying to weave them both together. If all this is confusing, good, because maybe you'll stay till the end of tonight so I can help unpack some of this stuff. That's the idea. Make it really confusing on the get-go and then make people come back. So let's talk about some of these reformations. And like I said, I'm going to take us tonight right up to the edge, right before Baptists come on the scene. All right, we have to lay the groundwork. I think it's interesting groundwork. It's very soap opera-esque groundwork. If you're into soap operas, you're going to eat this stuff up. Some of this stuff is so crazy you couldn't even write it if you just tried to imagine some of the stuff we're going to talk about, some of the vicissitudes of the English Reformation. But that's what we're looking at, Anglicanism and the English Reformation. You know about some of the other ones, though. One that started in Germany. We recently commemorated the 500th anniversary of the Protestant Reformation in Germany, headed by this cat here, Martin Luther. Maybe if you're like someone I know who went and got his or her picture taken with that big Martin Luther statue on Lenore Ryan's campus to commemorate the 500th anniversary. Maybe that was me. Maybe it wasn't, but maybe it was. Martin Luther. So that's one Reformation there in Germany. You've got another one happening in Switzerland, led by this guy, Ulrich Zwingli. John Calvin, you're familiar with that name. He's more of a second-generation reformer, but he's also doing a lot of his work in Switzerland. Another branch of the Reformation was in England. This one's different than all the other ones, though. If you know about Luther's life, you know about how a tortured soul he was. He was looking for, some kind of reconciliation with God, and he's thinking about ways of reforming the church. Well, that's not really how the English Reformation works. Why does it not work that way? Well, it's because it's led by this guy, Henry VIII, who's not really a theologian. He certainly has some strong religious beliefs, but he also has a lot of other impulses that are bearing on him. Those will become clear as we move forward. So let's look at old Henry VIII. You and I are going to have to wrestle with this question a little bit. We won't get into all the historiographical weeds unless you just really like that kind of stuff. We're going to be asking this question, wrestling with this question. Was Henry's Reformation political? Was it theological? Was it both? Now, I think we'd be pretty naive to think that it would have to be one or the other. I don't think you could look at Martin Luther and say with all his theological distress that he didn't have some idea of the political ramifications of what he was doing. Politics is always going to be in there. Money's always going to be in there. Gender's always going to be in there. For American history, race is always going to be in there. All these things are always bearing on any one historical event. So we know all this stuff is going on with Henry, but how much of what? Is this primarily a political reformation that has theological ramifications? Well, you have to decide. Henry VIII, his story, his soap opera, begins with his brother Arthur. Now, Henry VIII's father had married Arthur, and you know how it was in the late Middle Ages, where you're basically betrothing babies to one another, and the reason you do that is for political alliances. Arthur had been betrothed to Catherine of Aragon. Now, Catherine of Aragon, you may have heard of her mom and dad before, Ferdinand and Isabella. Those are the ones who, the monarchs who signed on the dotted line for Christopher Columbus to come over here and accidentally on purpose discover America. And so this is their daughter. All right? So she has been betrothed to Arthur. Sad thing is, though, Arthur isn't alive very long. Like just 4 or 5 months later, he is dead. Which means that this alliance that England has made with Spain now becomes very tenuous, right? Like, what are we going to do? We have to find a way to reestablish that alliance. And so the way Henry VIII's father figures out that he's going to do this, well, don't worry. We'll just marry Henry, who will become Henry VIII, Henry Tudor. We'll marry him to Catherine of Aragon. Now, maybe you're wondering, is that okay to do? Is it okay for, when you've got a brother and a wife, the brother dies, and then you just kind of step in and say, well, I'll be the husband. You're like, there's got to be something in the Bible that says that's not right. And actually, you could find some verses like that, and Henry will, but not yet. Up to this point, he goes to the Pope, and the Pope says, hey, it's okay. Except he said it in Latin. Yeah, it's okay. Special papal dispensation for you to marry your brother's widow. Henry VIII is okay, Catherine's okay, England's okay, Spain's okay. We move forward. Right? There's no sense here that Henry really is looking for a reason to break with the Roman Catholic Church, or what will eventually be called. Calling it Roman Catholic is kind of anachronistic. We're going to do it for the sake of clarity. There's no sense that he really wants to break with the Roman Catholic Church at all. In fact, in 1521, he had written specifically against the Protestant Reformation. He wrote this assertion of the seven sacraments against Martin Luther, particularly. Martin Luther had been questioning whether we really need 7 sacraments. Right now, as Baptists today, we realize that we only really look at 2 ordinances, baptism and the Lord's Supper. Well, Luther's the one who kind of starts this ball rolling, starting kind of chopping off certain sacraments. And, I don't really think that one's in the Bible. Then neither is that one. And so Henry's here. He's defending the 7 sacraments, defending the Roman Catholic Church. And for his efforts, Leo X, who was the Pope at the time, calls Henry VIII defender of the faith. Defender of the faith. Henry is a good Catholic. Not just any Catholic. He's a good one. See a little halo there? That means he's a good one. It's the only PowerPoint presentation you will ever see that puts a halo around Henry VIII's head. You can take a picture if you want. Now, here's the thing. Henry and Catherine are trying to produce an heir. Now, all this is going to sound very backwards to us, and it should. The way we're talking about gender, men, women, it's all going to sound very medieval, and it is. So what happens here is Henry expects that Catherine will produce, and I know that's just a weird way to say it, will produce a male heir. She doesn't. Now, I want to talk about some of the heirs here, and there's going to be a lot of miscarriages along the way, a lot of distress and sadness that goes in to these queens who are trying for Henry to produce a male heir. With Catherine, Henry does have one daughter, Mary. Remember her name. Mary is his daughter. She's not a boy, for those of you who are familiar with history. Not a boy. Therefore, she can't be the sole monarch of England. Now, today, you and I know that that is possible. In the 16th century, there wasn't really a precedent for that. So people were really wigged out that, wait a minute, no, you still got to have a boy. You still got to have a boy. Henry decides that maybe he's being punished by God. Right? Maybe God's punishing me. Don't you feel that way sometimes, like when you're trying to be late for work and your car doesn't start? God is punishing me. Well, that's what Henry thinks. God's punishing me. And he finds a verse in the Bible, in Leviticus, that says, you're not supposed to be marrying your brother's wife or you will be left childless. And Henry says, that's me. That's me. Then you're like, but Henry, you do have a child. Shh, it's not a boy child, so it doesn't count. Now, as a father of 2 young daughters, I just don't like Henry. Like, I want a picture of him in my office, I just throw darts at him. You know? So that's my bias kind of seeping out. You may be a fan, I'm not. But, so he's like, yeah, she's a girl, she doesn't count. So he asked for a divorce from the Pope, Pope Clement VII. Now here's where the drama gets even crazier. Charles V here, he's the Holy Roman Emperor. He's also the protector of Clement VII. Really, he just captured him. So he's protecting him by kidnapping him. And so basically, Clement has to do whatever Charles is putting pressure on him to do. He's like, well, why would Charles care anything about this? I'll tell you why he cares. Because his aunt is Catherine of Aragon. So Catherine of Aragon keeps writing him letters. Don't let me be disgraced by this divorce, what Henry's trying to do. So Charles puts pressure on Clement. Clement says, no on the divorce. Can't happen. Henry doesn't like this. He does not like people telling him no, even if the person telling him no is the Pope. So he goes out. He asks some of the people in England, some of his advisors, some of them sycophants, some of them who really want genuine change, Protestant change in England. Folks like Thomas Cranmer. Henry puts pressure on Clement to make Thomas the Archbishop of Canterbury. And then Henry tells Cranmer, why don't you go out and ask the university professors? You know you can't trust a university professor anyway. Go out there and just ask them their crazy ideas. If this would be okay for us to break away from the church. Cranmer does this, comes back and says, sure, university professors give you the big thumbs up. That's what Henry says. Yeah, okay. So this is what we're going to do. We're just going to break away. Well, who's going to be the head of the church if you break away? Well, I will. I'm the defender of the faith. I think I can run it just fine. So that's what Henry decides to do. In 1534, signs the Act of Supremacy. This breaks the Church of England away from the Roman Catholic Church. All right? Now, he himself, Henry VIII, is head of the Church of England. He says that Mary is not going to be his heir. Why? Well, because that marriage wasn't valid in the first place. If his marriage to Catherine isn't valid, keep up with this, folks. It's going to get crazier. If that marriage isn't valid, then that makes her an illegitimate child. If she's an illegitimate child, then she can't be queen. Therefore, I need a new queen and a new heir. He's not going to send any money to Rome anymore. And he's going to execute one of his closest friends, Thomas More, a chancellor who didn't like Henry breaking away from the church. Thomas More loses his head over that. From now on, I want you to look for the pendulum here. This is the English Reformation for you. Pendulum, back and forth, back and forth. Protestant to Catholic, Catholic to Protestant. That's what we're going to be doing for the next 15 minutes. Now over here, let's split us right here. Over here, you're going to be my Protestants, okay? Are you okay with being Protestants? Okay. I was worried about that. If somebody said, no, we're going to have to talk after this. Okay. Over here, you're going to be my Catholics. Now you just need to be okay with being Catholics. Now, okay, you're Catholics over here, you're Protestants over here. Does everyone remember who you are? Catholics, raise your hand. Good. Some of you. Not so great. Remember, you're the Catholics. You're the Protestants. All right? Next week, we can switch if you're kind of upset about it. All right, so I want you to think about this pendulum. We're going to be going back and forth. Back and forth. It's going to become very frenetic. I know I already seem very hyper. It's going to get even better. Anyone know who that is?
That's
Anne Boleyn. Now you might have thought, well, Henry, he was just reading his Bible and he saw in Leviticus that he's not supposed to marry his brother. No, give me a break. Give me a break. It's not about him reading. We did not come to a Wednesday night Bible study at the church and say, I wonder, maybe God's punishing me. No, it's about Anne Boleyn. He finds a woman that he likes better than Catherine of Aragon, a woman that he can choose instead of a woman who was chosen for him. And Henry says, I think I want Anne Boleyn to be my next queen. These are those impulses I'm talking about. It's not just theological here. It's not even just political. These are other impulses that work here. Henry's church, and we know this, or we can pretty much deduce this, because Henry, as soon as he breaks away from the Roman Catholic Church, he doesn't really change anything. Everything still looks very Roman Catholic. He does a couple of things that look a little bit Protestant-y, but mostly he just stays Roman Catholic. He is going to have the monasteries suppressed, take their money. Is that because he doesn't want to be Catholic or because he wants the money? You decide. He also puts English Bibles in churches. We just have a series of great lectures by Dr. Davis on how we got the Bible into English the way that we have it now. So he's put these English Bibles in churches. That's kind of Protestant-y. But in all the other ways, he really just stays a pretty good Catholic. Except that he breaks away from the church stops sending money to Rome, says that he is now head of the church, gives himself a divorce, and then gives himself a remarriage to Anne Boleyn. So everything should be fine, right? Well, Henry, how many wives did he have?
8.
Yeah, it's easy to think 8 because Henry VIII. He has 6 wives. He's going to divorce 2 of them. He's going to behead 2 of them. One's going to die in childbirth. One's going to be a widow. There's a funny little poem. It's actually not very funny. That's why I'm not reciting the poem. But there is a way of remembering that. So Anne Boleyn, she's going to be one of the ones who... and there's different reasons why. One is that she can't seem to produce a male heir either. Shame on her. She only has Elizabeth. You'll need to remember her name too. She has Elizabeth. Elizabeth will now be the heir apparent to the throne. We still need a boy. So Henry's got to get rid of her. He sees another woman that he kind of likes, and now he's kind of on a roll. Jane Seymour's the next lady he takes a shining to. And so he says, maybe you'll be the one who can give me a male heir. So he accuses Anne Boleyn of treason. She gets thrown into the Tower of London. Then she gets her head chopped off. And Jane Seymour becomes the next queen. Finally, we have a male heir. With Edward VI, Henry has his male heir. Everything should be fine now. Except that Edward is sickly. I don't really know how long he's going to live. This doesn't bode well. But it's okay for now. Henry thinks that's fine. There's my male heir. Jane Seymour, though, dies pretty soon after giving birth to Edward VI. So now Henry needs another wife. This is just a picture of the Tower of London that I took when I was at the Tower of London. There's no real purpose for me showing it to you, aside from just to let you know that I went to the Tower of London. This is where Anne Boleyn was kept. You can go there today, see the crown and jewels. You can also see a bunch of the armor that Henry wore. It's kind of interesting because it's not like you can take armor to the tailor and say, I need this to be let out a little bit. So you have different versions of armor, and this is true. Different versions of armor. You have skinny Henry armor, and then you have big Henry armor. And so it's pretty fun to go look at. But Henry dies. He leaves us. And his son, his heir, his male heir, now takes the throne. And we have our first swing. Henry's kind of stayed here, right? Well, actually, he stayed over there with Catholicism. Now he swings hard back this way, over here. You're not even smiling. It's like you don't even care. Am I the only one who cares about that? Look, yes. Edward VI. He's swinging on, and he's just a little kid. Like, does he really know what's going on? But he has all these protectors, these regents who are ruling on his behalf. They are swinging things way over here into Protestantville. Now you get communion of both kinds. You know what that means? It means you get the bread and the wine. Now, we probably take that for granted when we're taking communion, but back in this day, they're only taking the bread. Well, now you get it in both kinds. It's a very Protestant move here. The clergy could marry. That's not very Catholic-y. Images are taken out of churches. This is a carryover throughout the Protestant Reformation. Some churches today still don't like images in their churches. I worked for a church for 6 years. They had a bunch of beautiful stained glass, but not one outline of a person. It was very intentional. Now, they may or may not have known that's what they were doing, but they deliberately excluded images from the church. This is a carryover from Protestantism. You also have the first issue of the Book of Common Prayer, written by that guy, Thomas Cranmer, I told you about earlier. Puts out the Book of Common Prayer. So now over here in Protestantville, we're eating Protestant food, listening to Protestant music, wearing shirts that say, I heart Protestantism. Everyone's happy, except the Catholics. That's you over there. You're not happy about it. Wait a minute. I didn't sign up for Protestantism. What? You can't do that. Well, sure you can. You better just keep it quiet. Keep it down over here. Protestants are running the show now. The pendulum's over here. Uh-oh. He only reigned 6 years. Which means who's the next male heir for Henry? There's not one. Mary. Yeah, so Mary comes to the throne. Does she look happy?
No.
That's because she ain't. She's not happy. Henry disgraced her mother and called her illegitimate. She said, oh, no. Catherine, that was your legitimate marriage. I am your legitimate heir. And the legitimate church is over there. We're over here. Now you can be happy. You're still frowning like you didn't even want to win. But it's over here now. Now we're playing Catholic games and we're singing Catholic songs and everybody's happy except those Protestants over there. Those Protestants are like, well, now I just changed my driver's license and everything. I just got used to being a Protestant and now we switch back over here to Catholic. Well, what am I going to do? We can just switch back. I don't want to switch back. Well, then we could just kill you. What? That's right. There's a reason that Mary is called Bloody Mary, and it has nothing to do with her drinking habits. It has to do with what she does to you. Over the course of her reign, she will have 300 Protestants. Folks that just a few years earlier had been dancing in the streets, everything was great. They're going to be burned at the stake. Or beheaded if you're lucky. Now you can say, well, doesn't her sister Elizabeth execute a bunch of people? Sure she does, but she executes about the same number of people over a reign that is 10 times longer. Mary's got people in the expressway here. Now you've got some people who are saying, okay, I'm going to die for the faith. And they do. Like Thomas Cranmer. He says, I'm not going to recant you because you better, or you're going to burn at the stake. Then Cranmer says, okay, I recant. She goes, well, you're still going to burn at the stake. He goes, well, I recant my recantation. It's all true. You go look it up. Now, others of you said, yeah, like I'm really going to stick around and be burned at the stake. Peace out, Boy Scout. I'm out of here. Bye. So you don't have to do this. I'll pretend like I'm here. You just leave. Can you hear me over here from stuff? You just leave. Just go through this door. You're gone. You're a Marian exiles. You're gone. You're exiled because of Mary. We don't hear from you anymore. Mary dies in 1558. So, the Catholics had their day in the sun. Now who's going to follow up Mary, though? Elizabeth. Now remember, Elizabeth was the, well, actually this is a picture of where Thomas Cranmer was executed. It's kind of funny, they just put it right there in the middle of the road, or decided to put a road right over there. It's interesting. Those of you who have a Presbyterian friend, ask them where John Knox, the founder of Presbyterian, where he's buried. He's buried in Scotland, like in a parking lot. You can literally park over his grave. I haven't done that. But I mean, it's odd in Europe how they do some of these things. So Elizabeth is going to take over next. She swings everything back to Protestantism. So now you're happy, you're not so happy. She wanted uniformity in worship, puts out a new edition of the Book of Common Prayer. So there comes that pendulum again, swinging back toward Protestantism. 1562. She puts out the 39 Articles, which lays out the beliefs of the Church of England. A lot of that being very similar to how the Church of England today believes. She called her way the Via Media, which, there's actually a better way of pronouncing that, but basically it means the middle way. What do you mean the middle way? She stops right in the middle. Right here. She doesn't keep swinging over here. She doesn't keep swinging over there. She stops right in the middle. She reigns until 1603. This is a long reign. And over the course of those decades, she brings uniformity to the Church of England. And you will find in her reign, in her middle way, elements of Catholicism, elements of Protestantism. For the Roman Catholics, she had an emphasis on Eucharist or the Lord's Supper. She believed in apostolic succession, not necessarily through the Pope, but they could trace their spiritual lineage to the apostles. They had an episcopal polity. That just means that your authority structure leads up to one person instead of like a group of people. Or with Baptists, we have congregational polity. So we take votes as they are autonomy of the church. That's our polity. It's not that way here. It all kind of goes up to one person. So they have an episcopal polity. If you were Protestant, though, you could reject the papacy. That would be fine. Reject transubstantiation. Transubstantiation is the belief that the bread and the wine literally are transformed in their substance into the body and blood of Christ. Right? You reject that. You say, well, no, that's Roman Catholic. That's not what Protestants are going to believe. And the clergy can marry. So I have Episcopalian priest friends who are married. So it's a little bit of both. And so we are all happy. Right? Maybe. That's a good answer. Maybe you're happy. Maybe you're not. Some people are not so happy. Remember those Marian exiles, the ones that we left over there? Well, they come back. They see that pendulum swinging back, and they're happy. They're bebopping in the sky. They're like, yeah, this is great. The pendulum's swinging back to Protestantism. Everything's going to be fine now. And she slams the brakes right there in the middle, and they're like, huh? What? I mean, look at that guy. He doesn't look happy. He thought, what are you doing? You were on the right track just going over here, and now you've stopped. These folks begin to call themselves something, a word that you and I have heard many, many times. They call themselves Puritans. Because what are they trying to do? Purify the church of what? Not sin. Catholicism. You got to get rid of that. That's what they're trying to purify the church from. Now there were some Puritans, and Puritans is a big, big umbrella here. So some Puritans thought that you could work within the structure, you could stay part of the Church of England, you could basically remain Anglican and reform the church from within. Some said no, you just got to break away altogether. They're still Puritans, but they call themselves the Separatists. These aren't that clever of names. Puritans purify, Separatists separate. All right, I didn't come up with them, but they're pretty easy to remember. Separatists split away. The Baptist, there's your uncle, right there. All right? That's where we're going to go with this. The Puritans, here are the ways they try to purify the church of Catholicism. No wedding ring, so none of these. They thought that was very Catholic. Yeah, so you didn't know. Some of you Protestants over here were like you're taking it off. You don't have to do this, okay. No wedding ring. No to certain vestments. All right, so even Baptists, they were not good. They go to some Baptist churches, they have the robes, and sometimes they don't, and sometimes it comes out on special occasions. We're not big on vestments. No kneeling at the communion table, none of the cross, none of that stuff. That all looks very Catholic. No celebrating Christmas. What? No celebrating Christmas? Well, look, folks, Christ, Mass. That's what that is. Some of you are just here, I can't believe you ruined my whole holiday. You know, when the Puritans came over to America, the folks who were celebrating Christmas, they were the strangers, the heathens. They were celebrating Christmas. You know what the Puritans were doing? They were mending a fence, building a house. It was just like any other day to them. So it was the non-religious folks. They're like, ugh, you sinners, you're celebrating Christmas. Whatever, I'll be over here, feeding my mule. Too Catholic. Then this stuff isn't really that surprising. No drunkenness, no theater, no ostentatiousness of ecclesial leaders. None of that stuff. Separate. Get all that Catholicism out of here. Finally, and we'll end here, after Elizabeth's long reign, she is succeeded by a steward. Now, she's the last of the Tudors. She is going to be succeeded by a steward who was called James. That actually should be James the Sixth, not James the Fourth. James the Sixth in Scotland. When he comes to England, he becomes James the First. Now, this is the son of Mary, Queen of Scots. You've probably heard her name before. This is her son. This is James. You also recognize something else with James. What's happening around this time? New translations of the Bible. And you have the King James Bible, 1605. This is that James. Comes over here. Now you see how these things are magically kind of working together. All the Dr. Davis's lectures now with the church history, the Bible, and history on this wonderful harmony here. During James's reign, he's kind of coming down hard on the Puritans, and some of these Puritans are getting saucy. I mean, they've gone beyond trying to separate from the church. They're trying to do something else. You've got people who are looking at, really, they think all the rules seem to have been abandoned. You know, if we could really look at the Bible and just say, okay, what if we do that? What if we just start marking out all the things that we do as a church that we can't find in the Bible? All the things we can't justify anymore. Now that's getting pretty saucy. That's getting pretty radical. Some groups have done that, groups like the Anabaptists. But by James's reign, the early 17th century, we have another group that tries that. And in 1609, you have the first people who begin to take one another and say, listen, we think the infant baptism thing maybe isn't as legit as we once thought it was. They said, maybe we could just do adult baptism. As soon as you start thinking that way. Now, I did like this, but the first Baptists probably weren't doing that. They were probably just pouring over your head like fusion. Probably wasn't even immersion until around 1640s. And then you got these people. We're going to call them Baptists. Actually, people who don't like to call them Baptists. Most religious names are insults that end up getting stuck to you. Even the name Christian was kind of an insult. It basically means you're like a little Jesus running around. Quakers, really? Would you have named yourself Quakers? My favorite group is the Dunkers, because they do triune immersion, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. So you basically need scuba gear to be a dunker. But that's how we get that name. We get that name because we're those crazy folks who looked at the Bible and said, we're going to go a different way. And where we go, that's where we start next week. Next week we're going to start right there at 1609. So we have maybe 2 minutes for questions, and then I'll close this in prayer. Any questions? We'll do a quick catch-up for those of you who weren't able to join us last week. But those of you who were last week, you may have felt a little tricked, because I told you we were going to study Baptist. Where can I move, Will, now that I've been chastised? If I stay between these speakers?
You can move wherever you want to.
I'm doing a cartwheel later, so I'm giving you a heads up.
I know you're moving, so we're good.
All right. So last week we never really got to the Baptists, did we? We stayed with English Reformation, the Anglicans. We talked a lot about Henry VIII and his assortment of wives and that Reformation that swung back and forth, and we all probably got theological whiplash after last week, going from Protestant to Catholic, back to Protestant, back and forth, back and forth. So tonight, let's just quickly rehash where we are. We are trying to answer the question, where did we come from as Baptists? We talked about Baptists having a family tree, not a family trunk, right? Baptists do not, even if we really want really hard for this to be the case, Baptists don't have a direct trunk to Jesus. We have a lot of twists and turns, like every denomination does. We talked about the English Reformation, Henry VIII, and the Protestant and the Catholic, back and forth. And we ended by looking at the Puritans. Now, what were the Puritans trying to purify? Like, what were they trying to get rid of? You remember? Catholicism, right? So that's why they abandoned vestments, things like this, like wedding rings, crossing yourself. They abandoned all that stuff. They're trying to purify the church of Catholicism. This brought us all the way up to 1609 under the reign of King James VI in Scotland, King James I in England. And this is the namesake for the King James Bible, 1611. So this is where we were last time. Let's throw up this funky little flowchart again. If you're following us, we started here, way back here in the New Testament. We took this red road down to the Roman Catholic Church. We split off with Anglicanism, and that takes us to this other nightmare of a flowchart where Anglicanism splits off into Puritanism, right? So this is where we were, and now we're starting here. And you see the connection with Anabaptism, and I haven't made a big deal of that yet. But remember, the Anabaptists are the ancestors of the Mennonites and the Amish and some other peace denominations. So this is where we're going to start, right here, 1609. Those rascally Baptists. Where did they come from? Well, we know some of their genealogy. The Anglicanism, the Church of England. So you and I, if you're with me so far, then you are knowing that Baptists are coming from the Puritan separatist movement of the English Reformation. Tonight we're going to talk about two separate strains of Baptists that each developed independently. So that just complicates things. They are the General Baptist and the Particular Baptist. General Baptist and the Particular Baptist. Now we'll unpack all these a little bit later. But we're going to be talking about two distinct theological traditions, both laying hold to the name and identity Baptist. So let's look back at a gentleman with one of the most original names in history, John Smith. Our Baptist grandfather, so to speak. Many people will call him the first Baptist. If you're throwing out John the Baptist and John Smith in the 17th century, he's your guy. John Smith was a separatist Puritan. So remember, we had the Puritans, this big umbrella, they wanted to purify the Church of Catholicism. Then you have this separatist movement that wanted to split away altogether. You can't purify it. It's like the car that keeps breaking down on you, you keep putting money into it. That's what the Puritans are doing. And then at one point you feel like you put so much money into that old jalopy that you just need to sell it. You now put more money in it than it's even worth. That's what the separatists are thinking. We can't save this. We're just separating. We're leaving. So the separatists break away altogether. That's what John Smith and others are doing. In 1606, he joined a separatist congregation. Now this draws the ire of King James, who already hasn't been a fan of Puritans. He wants uniformity, just like Elizabeth I did. So he doesn't like the Puritans, which always kind of makes me laugh a little bit on the inside when you go to these Baptist churches that are like King James only. But that's fine, but you realize King James didn't like us at all. And if you really knew what King James thought about Baptists, maybe we wouldn't have such loyalty to his translation, but that's another story. We'll leave the Bible translating to Dr. Davis. In 1606, he joins a separatist congregation, which puts him on the radar of James I. So in 1608, he is suffering persecution. Now, other groups are going to suffer persecution as well. Baptists are one of these groups. Other, really, I say funky groups. They had funky names. The Levelers, the Diggers, the Fifth Monarchy. There are all sorts of groups that come up and then they disappear from the scene. The Baptists aren't one of them, though. The Baptists are going to start up around the early 17th century and they stick around. So, fleeing persecution, Smith goes to Holland. Now, this is a part of the story that you've probably heard before. There are other groups in Holland, which was known to be a hub of freedom, known to espouse and defend religious liberty. So that's where you go when you're persecuted. You go to Holland. What other group went to Holland before coming to America? The Pilgrims, right? So the Puritans and the Pilgrims, and again, Pilgrims are kind of part of that separatist movement as well. So you've got another group that's in Holland. One of these groups is going to split off in 1620, come over here to what will become the United States. They're going to eat some turkey. We're going to celebrate Thanksgiving. That's their story, okay? We're not going with them yet. You stay in England for right now. Now, Holland. We're starting in Holland, the First Baptist Church. He meets, Smith does, with his group, his congregation, at a Mennonite bakehouse. Here's your connection with Anabaptists. Those Mennonites. Now, what do the Mennonites believe? Well, they believe all sorts of things. They believe separation from the world. I mean, if you've ever gone to Amish country, they are separate from the world. There's no way, no bones about it. They're also peace denominations, pacifists. You won't normally see any Amish person running for local office, will you? No, because how do you serve the government if you're supposed to be so strictly separated? Keep that in mind. So these Anabaptists that had developed way back in the early 16th century, around 1525, they're developing the Anabaptist tradition. Smith knows these folks, but the Anabaptists have done something else that he's interested in. When I say Anabaptist, A-N-A, that's Greek for again. It's not anti. It's not anti-Baptist. It's Anabaptist. Again, Baptist. What do you think that means? What do you mean they're twice Baptist? It means they baptize again. Now, what was the first baptism? As an infant. Right? So everyone was baptized as an infant. That was just the default. I mean, that's how they register you as a citizen in the town you are. You're baptized as an infant. So the Anabaptists got this derisive name. You are the re-baptizers. You do that adult believer's baptism. You kind of double up on the baptism. Nah, we don't like that. So that's why the Anabaptists get a lot of persecution. So this is who Smith's hanging out with now at their bakehouse. And they're saying things like, well, in the Bible, we don't see infant baptism. We think you should be baptized as a believer. So Smith adopts congregationalism. What's congregationalism? If you know what congregationalism is, raise your hand. See what I just did there? That's congregationalism. Everyone raise your hand. Now, none of you did it, and that's fine. But the whole point that in Baptist circles, we ask you, raise your hand. Let's all take a vote. Now, if we didn't, then, when Butch leads a business meeting, he says, all right, here's the decision. Deal with it. Right? That's not congregationalism. We probably wouldn't ask Butch to be the moderator any longer either. But in Baptist, Butch said, "All right, we're going to take a vote. Yay? Like sign, Robert's Rules of Order. We rely on the congregation. In the congregation, we hope to hear the voice of God. This is how God speaks to us, through the Bible and through the community, through the congregation. So he adopts congregationalism. That means we don't have bishops. We don't have allegiance to a pope. It's not this episcopal hierarchy that goes up to one person. It's not like the Presbyterians that goes up to a group of elders. It's not like that either. Everything's in the congregation. So Smith adopts this. He emphasizes a gathered church. By that he means voluntary. You came to church tonight, I hope, voluntarily. No one forced you to do it. You're not going to get fined by the government because you didn't come to church. Now, if you had been in the Church of England, that would have been different, right? Back in the 17th century. But we are voluntarily here, a gathered church. For John Smith, the issue was infant baptism. He's looking at the Bible, just like those Anabaptists were doing. He's looking at the Bible saying, if I'm just trying to recreate what I see in Acts, what I see in the Gospels, he just didn't see a lot about infant baptism. Now, you and I know Methodists and Episcopalians and folks that practice infant baptism, and folks, if you ever talk to them, they have very good reasons why they practice infant baptism. They do. They don't just randomly believe. People have good reasons for why they believe what they believe a lot of times. But Smith thought, no, we don't. I understand what those reasons are, but I feel like I should really take my cue from the Scriptures. And from what his interpretation of Scripture was that infant baptism wasn't there. Sorry, that's for my daughters. They're not in here, but they would appreciate that. 3 of you also do. So Smith does something that maybe you've never heard of. Say baptism. What does that mean? It means he baptized himself. Anyone in here ever baptized yourself? You don't have to answer that. Tell me afterwards though. He baptized himself. How do you even do that? Well, he did. This is called say baptism. He probably did so through effusion. Oh, that sounds like it hurt. But no, effusion just means you pour over the head. We have these ways. Sometimes historians and theologians, in order to sound smart, we throw around words in Latin or Greek, or we make up words like effusion, where we could just say pouring. Isn't that the same thing? Yes. But, when you get a PhD, you have to make up new words. So, effusion, pouring over the head. The sprinkling, we call that aspersion. All right? And in Baptist, we talk about immersion, which really we should say submersion. We don't do midway, because some denominations do immersion, like semi-immersion. You're standing up in the waist and then they pour up your head. It's kind of like a mixture of both worlds. Kind of like a hybrid baptism. Lots of flavors. I tell my students that, these religious denominations, it's like reaching into a bag of Jelly Bellies and eating them in the dark. You just don't know what flavor you're going to get next. So there's all these different flavors of baptism during this time. He's doing it through effusion. In 1612, he writes a confession. Now, not the confession like in the court, but the confession you and I talk about. The Baptist confessions of faith. What do we as Baptists believe? So this is what he does, and what he does is he affirms religious liberty. Why do you think he's such a big proponent of religious liberty? He's been persecuted. It's all about context. Yes, of course he wants religious liberty, not just for Baptists though, for everyone. Now, this is important for us to remember. For John Smith and the early Baptists, the only way you could preserve religious liberty for yourself was to defend religious liberty for everyone. Even the people you could not stand. But you had to defend their religious liberty in order to preserve your own. So keep that in mind as we go forward. This is the first time an Englishman ever put into writing that we should have a concept like religious liberty. Now in America, this is the air we breathe, right? First Amendment, Thomas Jefferson, all these founding fathers. This is just our ethos, right? But not in England. This was a radical thing in England and in Holland in 1612. He's also shifting from Calvinism to Arminianism. Do you know the difference between the two? Calvinism is more of the predestination. And that's simplifying it, but total depravity, unconditional election, limited atonement, irresistible grace, perseverance of the saints. These are all Calvinist beliefs. He's shifting here with more of an emphasis on free will. More of an emphasis on free will. Now his buddy, Helwys, now some of you have already figured out where this is going. Smith and Helwys Publishing Company, there you go. This is where it comes from. Thomas Helwys was a wealthy member of Smith's congregation, but he decides to break with Smith. Why does he do it, you ask? Well, because Smith said, I should probably just join the Mennonites. Smith came to think, after he baptized himself, after that genie's out of the bottle, he can't get it back in. After he's got that toothpaste out of the tube, he has started something now. But he's like, you know what, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. I can't just make up my own church. I mean, who does that? So he said, well, I should probably just go with an established church like the Mennonites and receive their baptism. And Helwys says, too late for that. It's too late for that. You have crossed the Rubicon, my friend. You have started something. And if you're not going to carry it on, then I will. So Helwys breaks with Smith. And here's another reason it's pretty dubious that the Baptists are really coming out of the Anabaptists. Because from the very beginnings, Smith is the only one who acknowledges any kind of connection with the Anabaptists. Everyone else keeps saying, we're not Anabaptists. They just keep saying it over and over and over and over again. Of course, a lot of these Anabaptists were being drowned. So that's one reason you would say that, right? These Anabaptists, by the government would get them and they would put a rod behind their knees. I'm not going to contort myself for you. They would put a rod behind their knees and wrap their arms around them like that so that they're stuck and they're tied together. Dump them off the side of the boat and say, there you go. You want to be baptized? There's your third baptism. That's what happened to Anabaptists. So there was actually a very practical reason. If someone called you an Anabaptist, you said, not me. That's not me. So all the early Baptists are saying is most of them are saying, we're not Mennonites, we're not Anabaptists. So Thomas Helwys' his group returns to England. At a place called Spitalsfield, gosh, what a name. Maybe he should have thought about renaming it, that's okay. Spitalsfield, we have the first Baptist church on English soil. First one at Spitalsfield. Helwys begins talking about the office of deacons. Now, when I say deacons versus deaconesses, well, Helwys calls women who are serving in that capacity, he calls them deacons. Now, Smith had called them deaconesses. All right, so there's maybe a subtle, not so subtle, accidentally on purpose distinction Smith was making there. Helwys doesn't see that distinction. And so when we get to the 70s and the 80s of the 20th century, Baptists are all over the place with, women in ministry. What do we do? Helwys, women see it in the Bible, women serving as deacons, then they should be deacons in our church. What are these Baptists trying to do? They're trying to take what they see in the New Testament, trying to recreate it. Sometimes they're successful, sometimes they're not. Well, Helwys says, that's one way, that's something I see in the Bible. So that's what we're going to do. He also thinks that Christians can serve as magistrates. In other words, Christians or Baptists, let's go ahead and say Christians. He thought that Christians could serve in government capacity, right? Government capacity. Most of us today would just assume that. We would say, well, why couldn't a Christian serve in a capacity? Well, 2018 was that, well, can a Christian have the nuclear launch codes? Let's make it applicable for us. What do you think about that? Now, of course, many of us would say, well, of course they can. But see, that wasn't a given back then. That wasn't a given when you're in a context where some people are saying, the government is my enemy. Well, right? In America, we don't necessarily see that way. God bless America, Pledge of Allegiance, all this stuff. The government's not our enemy, but here they're coming out of a context where the government is your enemy. The government's trying to hunt you down, take away your religious liberty. So he's really asking this question very legitimately. Can Christians even serve a government that is persecuting us like this? He's also going to be more Arminian. By 1612, he's written one of his most famous treatises, and I realize that the spelling here is sometimes going to be weird. This is how they spelled it back then, so don't come down hard on me. A short declaration on the mystery of iniquity. This is the first treatise in England that ever pushes for religious liberty. So he's now echoing Smith, calling for religious liberty. Not just for Baptists, but for everyone. Now, let me give you a line out of this to just let you know. This is anti-King James. He's writing this to King James, saying, I'm talking to you, King James. Here it comes. Look what he writes. Now, this is not the kind of language you and I would use today. Okay? There are more BC ways of doing what he's doing here. But this is what he says. Let them be heretics, Jews, Turks, or whatever. Not like he means Muslims here, right? This is not the language you and I would use. This is the language he uses. Or whatever. It pertains not to the earthly power to punish them in the least measure. This is to King James, saying it is not your business if people want to believe one God, 2 gods, 3 gods, 100 gods, or no God. The government should keep their hands off. You should have no say in it whatsoever. In order to preserve your own religious liberty, you have to defend the religious liberty of everyone. Even people with whom you disagree. This is what it was to say. The particular Baptists, all those, and we're only just going one slide here, but up to this point we're talking about general Baptists. Why do we call them general Baptists? Because they believe in a general atonement. Right? I'll say that again. They believe in a general atonement. That God's grace is open to everyone. That Christ died for everyone. Now the particular Baptists are going to take a different road here. They're going to say that Christ only died for particular people. Now, does that sound more Arminian or more Calvinist? It sounds more Calvinist. So these are your particular Baptists. Today, folks, we still got those jelly bellies. You can meet a Baptist on the street, and they may be a Calvinist. You can meet a Baptist on the street. There's a lot of Baptists on the street for some reason. They could be an Arminian. Yeah, there's still diversity within Baptists today. That's a part of what it means to be Baptist. So these particular Baptists develop separately from the general Baptists. They're more Calvinistic in nature, though. They're also from the Puritan separatist movement. And it's in the 1640s that these particular Baptists start talking about baptism by immersion. Up to this point, we're still baptizing probably, easy for you to say, probably by effusion, probably by pouring. 1640s, we get the immersion. So we get that from the particular Baptist. The Calvinist strains in Baptist thought, that's particular Baptist. Now today, when a Baptist says, once saved, always saved, well, that's coming from Calvinism. Now, if you didn't know, they like, what? Well, that's what that is. I mean, that's one of the tenets of Calvinism. Perseverance of the saints. That's the Calvinist way of saying it. Baptists say, once saved, always saved. Or my favorite, a faith that fizzles at the finish was faulty from the first. Alliteration, you can't get away from it. And so, that's the way. Now, some Baptists aren't big on that. They're not big on the once saved, always saved. A lot of Baptists are. Diversity. All right, so now let's shift gears. Hang on. I've told you a lot of the history. We've been going 1,000,000 miles an hour. Baptist history at 30,000 feet. Now let's kind of come out of the clouds a little bit and look at what some of these early Baptists were believing. Now I'm not going to come all the way up to 2018 with Baptist history. We're staying in the 17th century, okay? Here were some of the early beliefs. Some of these might surprise you. Hopefully most of them won't. I'd hate for, after this, you can say, well, heck, I've been a Presbyterian the whole time. I never knew it. I'm not trying to convert anyone away from where you are. I'm just telling you that this is where most 17th century Baptists were. Number one, baptism. Duh. We know that this was an issue for early Baptists. Believer's baptism was the name of the game. If you were a Smith or a Helwis, infant baptism, well, it was not valid to these early Baptists. They would not have agreed that they were actually re-baptizing anyone. They'd say, no, there's only one legitimate baptism. That's the baptism that you get after you have confessed belief, then you are baptized. Now, Luther and others, they had these very elaborate beliefs or justifications for why you would have infant baptism. But the Baptists, they don't buy it. No, we're just going to look in the New Testament and see how they practice baptism there. This is how we're going to do it here. Okay? Early Baptists did not insist that clergy do the baptizing. That surprises some people. What? You mean anyone could just baptize someone? Well, you could. You didn't necessarily have to be a clergy to do it. Freedom of conscience, also a big deal for early Baptists. Now, there is a reason I have a picture of Bob Barker. This wasn't a PowerPoint slide that just got slides in there like at midnight when I'm not paying attention. We're going to tie it in. You hang in there. Don't you leave me. You hang in. We're going to bring Bob Barker into it. Freedom of the conscience was paramount for the Baptists. It was everything. You had to have the right of dissent. You had to have the right to say, I disagree. That's why we do congregationalism, right? That's why we don't say, who's in favor of the motion and then go on. Who's in favor? Now, who's not in favor? Nay. Right, you have to have the right of dissent. Always, always, always. What you're doing is you're relying on your personal religious experience, and we are all affirming that. Now, this can be dangerous, can't it? Personal religious experience, listening to the Spirit. What if the Spirit tells you something that the Spirit's not telling me? This is dangerous. What if you read the Bible and you hear God's voice in a way that I don't, and we come to very different beliefs? That's a very dangerous way. Now, we could just enforce one way of believing, but Baptists thought, no, we don't think that's going to work either. So they took the more dangerous path here. They said, maybe God's talking to all of us. Maybe we could affirm each person's personal religious experience. But at the same time, it is very individualistic in this sense, not in the bad sense. Here's where Bob Barker comes in. You know when you're watching Price is Right? Don't act like you don't. When you're watching Price is Right, and the folks come up and say, now I'm going to say Bob Barker. I realize Drew Carey hosts it now. I don't recognize that as a valid, Bob Barker, that's my guy. All right, so go up there and pretend like Bob Barker's still there. And he's asking, how much you think this bottle of dishwasher soap is? And what do those people do? They look out to the audience. Tell me, folks. And then they were screaming, he's dead, he's dead. Oh, they're going crazy. Like they're just go out of their mind. Ah! And then the person's saying, what? They listen to 300, 400 people tell them, what? And then you know what that person cannot do at that point? You can't look at Bob Barker and say, what they said. Right? What do you have to tell Bob Barker? You're big. Oh, this was big for Baptists. It's fine to rely on the congregation. That's good. But when it comes down to it, and you're at the pearly gates, you can't rely on what everyone else said. What do you believe? So now you and I are thinking New Testament, sitting around the campfire, when the disciples are roasting marshmallows, making s'mores, and then Jesus makes it really awkward by saying, who do people say that I am? And so people will pull the classic thing that my students like to pull, like, well, some people say this, and some people say this. And what does Jesus say? I didn't ask you, who do you say that I am? Ooh, now that makes it really awkward. Baptist said, one day you're all going to be staring at God. Now, I hate to, Bob Barker, I hate that you're making that analogy. Now, but that's one day. You're going to be on stage, and God's going to ask you, what do you believe? Yourself, no one else. So in one sense, we are relying on the community. In another sense, you still got to make that bid yourself. The Lord's Supper. Baptists have a particular way of understanding the Lord's Supper. It's a memorial view. Now, there's other ways of believing in the Lord's Supper or practicing the Lord's Supper. You might believe in transubstantiation. We've talked about that. There are other variations of understanding the efficacy of the Lord's Supper. Baptists have espoused a memorial view. Now, they didn't come up with this view, but basically they are looking at the New Testament where Jesus says, do this in remembrance of me, and Baptists say, well, that's what you do. You remember. Now, what cheeses me off is when people say, oh, for Baptists, Lord's Supper is just symbolic. That's like fingernails on a chalkboard. Just symbolic. No, it's not just symbolic. Symbolism is very important. You remember what we did the Wednesday night before Easter? When we had the Lord's Supper? What's a little bit different about that worship service? You have people in period clothing. And then that communion spills out into the audience. So we went first century, and then it merges with the 21st century. That's what we're talking about here. Some Baptist scholars have described this as anamnesis. All right, so let's break down that word. Anna, you already know what that is. Again, right? And then this root here. So if someone has amnesia, they've lost memory. If you use a mnemonic device, you're helping to remember. This means to remember again, to call it into the present, to pull the first century into the 21st century, to the point that you're looking and you can see Jesus Christ there, period clothing, right there. Now, you don't think anything spiritual is happening in terms of the bread actually becoming the body of Christ, but that's transubstantiation. You don't necessarily believe that. But you can't just say that's just symbolism either. Any more than you remember a relative who has passed away. And you have a time of remembering. That's very visceral. That's very emotional. It's very special. It's not just anything. Baptists saw the Lord's Supper as a memorial, a time of remembering again Jesus and His sacrifice. They also practiced closed communion. Most of them did. Now, not all of them wanted this. Closed communion, by this I mean, there's variations of closed communion, but by this I mean that they thought only baptized believers could, partake in the Lord's Supper. Some Baptists didn't like that. They thought it should be open to everyone who shows up. Most Baptists kind of lean toward the closed communion. Now, there will be other Baptists, like in the 19th century, that close it down even more and say, no, you can only be a member of this particular church. So they closed it even more than that. You had to be baptized right here. Most Baptist churches aren't like that today, but in the 19th century, you do have Baptist churches that will take that turn. They also espoused confessions. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail here. The First London Confession of 1644, they talk about religious liberty. They talk about baptism by immersion. The Second London Confession of 1677, this is more Calvinistic in nature. Why do you need to know about the confessions? Because this is another big thing for Baptists, right? Baptists aren't big on creeds. So when Dr. Davis asked me to be a part of that Wednesday night service I told you about, with the apostles, and he said, and Christopher, I want you to lead the congregation in the reading of the Apostles' Creed. I said, say what now? You're going to need to turn your mic up a little bit more. What? Me lead a Baptist church in the reading of the Apostles' Creed? Sure, I'm going to be fine. And it was. No one even beat me up afterwards. Because Baptists traditionally, we've kind of stiff-armed the creeds. We've said no creed but the Bible. Okay, we only have 2 Baptists left. The rest of you have left. You've become another denomination. Right. The Baptists say, no creed but the Bible. Now, for Baptists, and again, you have relatives, we have friends, relatives, who they read creeds every single Sunday, and we love them. We'll go to Hardee's with them and share a value meal. We love them. But we don't necessarily agree with them because in the Baptist mind, for right or wrong, Baptists tend to think that creeds are, here's what you have to believe, sign on the dotted line. Baptists hate that. Oh, they hate that. When I was younger, my sister, she was not even school age. She would insist on dressing herself. And my mother would say, put on this dress, and I can still see the dress. It's this little dress with little white frills and the tights and everything. My sister hated it. She said, I do it myself. I do it myself. Now, of course, she put her dress on upside down, backwards, have the leotards around her head. All right, she's doing it. She does it all wrong. She doesn't know how to dress herself. But she insisted she would do it herself. So one Sunday before we went to church, we're running late. Mom finally has wrangled her into this little red dress. Then Mom goes and does something else. She comes back, and when she does, there's my sister, standing in her underpants. So it's not even rated G anymore. She's standing right there in her underpants, dressed in a big pile right here. Hands on her hips, saying, I say, I do it myself. That's Baptist. We'd rather sit there in our underpants and say, I'll do it myself. Don't you tell me what to believe. Now, maybe that's a weakness we have. Maybe we can take that too far. But that's Baptist. Love it or hate it. That's what we are. We don't like people telling us this is what you have to believe. Sign right here. Now, we don't mind describing what most of us believe. We call those confessions. This is what we think most of us believe. But what if I don't believe that confession? Well, that's okay. Now, we aren't that blasé about it. Like, you don't believe whatever you want. We're not that. But we're like, okay, we can still be together. We can still inhabit the same space. We're not going to kick you out, right? We're just confessing what most of us believe. There is a distinction there, maybe a subtle one. but a distinction. Baptists also believe in religious liberty. Religious liberty. And we really see this playing out big with Smith and Helwes and with this cat here, Roger Williams. Anyone ever heard of him? Roger Williams. Roger Williams, by 1639, he had founded the First Baptist Church in America. So we got Smith founding the First Baptist Church, Helwes founding the First Baptist Church in England, Roger Williams founding the First Baptist Church in the United States, in Providence, Rhode Island. Now, how does he get there? Well, really quickly, I'm going to be quick here. Roger Williams made 4 assertions that got him in trouble with the Puritans. All right, so he's a Puritan during this time. Massachusetts Bay. Puritans with the grumpy faces and the buckles on their hats, making people wear letters on their clothes when they do naughty things. These are the Puritans there. They don't like free thinkers. Now, Roger Williams is a free thinker, maybe even too free. He starts making all sorts of assertions. He says, by the way, this whole idea that the Native Americans were on our land before we got here, that doesn't make sense. Roger Williams says the only reason you should be on land that the Native Americans had is if you purchase it from the Native Americans. And the Puritans say, what? Who invited you? Second, you shouldn't make people take political oaths. Why not? Why can't you ask someone to swear on the Bible? Well, Roger Williams said, because a lot of these people aren't Christians. You make them swear on the Bible. That's not right. You're just turning them into hypocrites. You're forcing them to be hypocrites. Stop that. Stop that, Roger. No one likes you. Number 3, separatism. Separatism from the Church of England, which a lot of these Puritans didn't like that. But also separatism from the government. He wants the government far away from religion. Now, what are the Puritans trying to do? Establish a holy commonwealth. Of course, you got to have the government and the church together. They got to be together. That's how you help people act the way you're supposed to act. Roger said, no. Keep the government as far away as possible. That's what he said. He also thought that Christians really shouldn't be serving as civil magistrates. He didn't like that idea either. So all these things make the Puritans very angry at him. Angry enough that they kick him out. 1635, he's banished from the colony. Out there into the wilderness. You're like, well, where could he go? And we're still founding these colonies. He can't go anywhere, folks. That's the idea. You're banished. Do not collect $200. Do not pass go. Sayonara. You're gone. Bye. But Roger Williams has an ace in the hole. Remember, he's made buddies with the Native Americans, saying crazy things like we shouldn't take their land. So the Native Americans actually take him in and basically save his life so he doesn't die in the wilderness. He remembers this in 1636. He founds Providence, Rhode Island. Providence, the name, meaning but God's provision. And Roger Williams says, if God had not provided for me in the wilderness through the Native Americans, I would have been there. So he stops in Providence, Rhode Island. That's where we have the First Baptist Church. But Rhode Island gets this nasty reputation for being a cesspool. Why? Because you never know what kind of religion you're going to find there. There's no established religion in Rhode Island. It looks like Holland. What? No, Holland just kind of made its way into the United States. And a little bitty state called Rhode Island. If you're a Quaker, come up there. Roger Williams hated Quakers. But, come on up here. Church of England? Sure. Baptist, Presbyterian? Sure. Come on up here. Everyone can have religious freedom in Rhode Island. In 1644, he wrote The Bloody Tenet of Persecution, again with some funky spelling here. He espoused liberty, not toleration. And you know the difference, right? Toleration, you just tolerate. It's kind of like, I'll tolerate you. I'll condescend to you. Religious liberty kind of takes all the restraints off. Roger Williams says, absolutely no toleration. You don't need a government to tolerate what you're doing. You should have complete, absolute, total, categorical, unrestrained religious liberty. He was also anti-Constantine. Now I'm really testing him. You remember who Constantine was? Back there in the 4th century, Roman Empire. The century before Constantine, Christians had been persecuted under the worst persecution they had ever experienced, the great persecution under Diocletian. By the beginning of the 4th century, Constantine takes the reins, and by the end of the 4th century, Christianity is the official religion of the Roman Empire. Talking about whiplash. In the 200s, Christians are being thrown to the lions. By the end of the 300s, it is now illegal not to follow that official religion. So Roger Williams said, we may think that was good because it ended persecution. He said it was a terrible idea. As soon as you put the government and the church together, they're both in trouble. That's what Roger Williams is saying. He thought there should be a hedge of separation between church and state. You're like, wait, I caught you. I know that Roger Williams didn't come up with that. That was Thomas Jefferson who said that. No, that was Roger Williams who said that. Roger Williams said there needed to be a separation, a hedge of separation between the garden of the church and the wilderness of the world. This is over 150 years before Thomas Jefferson puts quill to paper and writes in an 1802 letter, there is a wall of separation between church and state. Guess who Jefferson was writing to? Baptists. Baptists who had written a letter to him, worried, sick. Our state's going to start cracking down on us, TJ. What are we going to do? Thomas Jefferson says, don't worry, there's a wall of separation between church and state. And those Baptists weren't looking at that letter saying, oh man. They were saying, whew, good. So it's a different way when we talk about, when the Supreme Court talks about separation of church and state, when you and I talk about separation of church and state, we aren't always thinking about that context. We're not always thinking about 17th century. What did they mean when they were talking about separation of church and state? Well, they're coming out of a context of persecution, where they think that's the only way of preserving what it means to be Baptist. That's what Roger Williams said. Now, he doesn't stay Baptist, by the way. He eventually is going to break away and become a seeker. And as we have said before, once that genie's out of the bottle, it's out of the bottle. So now the Baptist church begins to grow in America because of Roger Williams. So these beliefs fit pretty well in America. But there is a reason that Baptists grow so quickly in America. Because the United States, the early founders, started saying things like there should be a complete religious liberty. They put an establishment clause, a free exercise clause in the First Amendment of the Constitution. Do you know who's whispering in the ears of those founders? The Baptists. Come on. They loved Thomas Jefferson. One of the most famous Virginia Baptists, John Leland. He sent Thomas Jefferson a giant block of cheese. I guess that's what you did when you really liked somebody. He gave him this giant block of cheese, saying, thank you. We appreciate you looking out for us Baptists. So this merges really well with the U.S. Republic in the 18th century. That's talking about religious freedom and the like. So really quickly, themes, and then we'll go to Q&A. I'll let you go. Some themes that we can learn from some of these things. And you may identify some more. Number one, Baptists traditionally have been Bible-based. Now, that doesn't always mean that we agree. It's easy to say, I'm Bible-based and you're not. Well, oftentimes, I'm reading the Bible, you're reading the Bible, and we're seeing two different things. Or we're maybe emphasizing two different scriptures, or maybe even the same scripture, just looking at it from two different angles. But Baptists have tried to be Bible-based. They've tried to recreate the New Testament church. That's what Baptists were trying to do. Persecution is also an issue here. But I want to say something that's probably going to keep us all awake tonight. Realize that the persecution that these Baptists are trying to get away from isn't coming from a secular government. It's not coming from atheists. Who's it coming from? It's coming from Christians. So in third grade, when we all learned about the Puritans coming over to America to escape religious persecution, what your third grade teacher may or may not have told you was that, oh, by the way, those were other Christians trying to get them. So that's where you and I, where the rubber meets the road. Some of the worst persecution can come from the most religious folks. I mean, Paul, come on. Right, he was very, very religious. And then all of a sudden, he has a meeting, chance encounter with Jesus Christ on the road to Damascus. And Jesus is saying, when you persecute these folks, who are you persecuting? You're persecuting me. And Paul says, oh no, I made a huge mistake. Persecution is coming from other Christians. We have to watch out about that. Diversity, early Baptists were diverse. You may not like it. Maybe I don't like it. Or maybe we do. We like this mosaic. Very diverse. Never too rigid. We do have some common beliefs that we would put in confessions, but we are very diverse. And we are dangerous. Dangerous. It's dangerous because we are all saying you can read the Bible for yourself. That's dangerous because you can come up with a different conclusion than I did. It's dangerous if we say, listen to your conscience, because your conscience might be telling you something different than my conscience is telling me. That's why you always have to be careful. When someone comes up to you, maybe trying to get you on a committee, I'm not saying this ever happened to me, maybe it has, where someone comes to me, God's told me you need to be on that committee. I'm doggone. God must have got a busy signal when God called me, because I didn't hear that. But God apparently told you that. Now, I'm not saying God does speak to other people, folks. We all know that. But you have to be careful here. It is dangerous to say that God speaks to us all. Because if we disagree, then maybe we split. And maybe we can disagree and even stay together. That's the crazy part. Not that we agree and stay together, but that we disagree and stay together. That's what Baptists are. We may not see that as the Baptist reputation, but that's what Baptists have been doing. Also, we have the tension. This is the last one. The tension between the individual and the community. Baptists are very individualistic. You have to tell Jesus, who do you think I am? You've got to give your bid to Bob Barker. Just you. At the same time, in Congregationalism, we trust that God speaks to us through the congregation. That we don't need a hierarchy. And so Baptists are very fiercely autonomous. Do we have a state convention? Sure. Can they tell you what to believe? They could. But it's not going to do anything. Could a national convention tell you what to believe? They go right ahead and try. We'll be there in our underpants saying, I do it myself. And that's not being anti-Baptist, that's being quintessentially Baptist. That's what it means to be Baptist, is to tell you, don't you ever tell me how to be Baptist. Because that's the most Baptist thing I can say. See how that happens? The individual, and we rely on the community. There's a tension here. So what I would say, if you ask me to sum up Baptist history for you, I would go right back to alliteration. I began our study with alliteration. I'm going to end with alliteration too. I would say three things, 3 C's. All right. Baptists traditionally have tried to recreate or try to emulate Christ. All right. We have relied on the community. We've trusted the community, and at all costs, no matter what, we followed conscience. Don't ever stop following your conscience. Your mom told you that when you were little. John Smith and Thomas Helwers will tell you the same thing. Don't ever stop following your conscience. Christ, community, conscience. You ask me, is that who Baptists are? I think it is. I think that is who we are. That's my opinion. You can disagree with it. You know why? Because you're Baptist. Questions?